This special limited series of the Mother Jones podcast is brought to you by our presenting partner, Raycon, premium audio inspired by your ambition. Get 15% savings off your order of sleek, comfortable, and affordable wireless earbuds at buyraycon.com/mojopod.
Hey, it's Jamila King, host of the Mother Jones podcast. I've got a special treat for you. For the next 3 weeks, my colleague, David Korn, Washington, D.C. bureau chief at Mother Jones, has something special in store. David, what's this about? What are you taking over the show for?
Well, several months ago, I was preparing to bring you and everybody else a new podcast called Let's Go There. It was being produced jointly by Mother Jones and the Comedy Cellar, which is the historic comedy club in New York City. And the idea was to do an interview every week or so with an artist, writer, musician, actor, comedian, or anyone else that I find fascinating. And we would get smart takes, personal stories about culture, politics, and their own work. And it was really neat. We were recording these, and the intention was to record them on stage at the Comedy Cellar itself, without an audience, but still with all the vibes and all the grime of the years of sweat and comedy that came out of that club. That was the goal.
And then let me guess, something interrupted your plans.
Well, as with many of us, well-made plans got put aside when the coronavirus pandemic hit. Now, we had to put the project on hold, but before that happened, before our world changed, I did record interviews with several cultural heroes for this new podcast.
Like who?
Well, we had Debbie Harry, the lead singer of Blondie.
One of the things that sort of saved me from being a complete asshole was that I started a little bit later in life.
We had John Leguizamo, a wonderful actor.
Oh my God, it is the dumbest thing I have ever done.
And we had talk show host Samantha Bee.
I do have a lot to say in this climate, so I'm going to say it.
It was wonderful to have each of them in at a different day for an hour and so of talking about their work, their history,
Just crazy stuff that went on, for like 48 hours.
politics,
I went to Florida and I flipped the seat that was been red for 30 years.
the creative process.
I think that I was clearly obsessed. I felt that I was always obsessed. I could never really get it out of my mind that, music was so important to me.
Well, David, that all sounds super awesome, and I can't wait to tune in. So I'll see everybody who's listening in August, and David, take it away.
Thanks, Jamila. I'll see you back in August as well. These conversations were recorded before COVID-19 became a national threat and before the fight for racial justice took to the streets throughout the country.
I didn't realize podcasts for so long.
Well, we're going to cut it back a little bit. On this week's show, a man who thinks we're morons. All of us. That's John Leguizamo, noted actor, playwright, comic, author, activist, and educator. His Latin History for Morons is a one-man show that challenges the whitewashing of the history of Latinx people with facts, personal stories, and of course, dirty jokes. It is toured across the country and can be seen on Netflix. It's poignant and hysterical, and yes, educational. John was born in Colombia and grew up in Queens, New York, and he has appeared in big-budget movies while creating a series of highly acclaimed theater pieces that have explored his Latin roots, his, shall we say, amusing family, and his standing as an immigrant in the United States. Recently, he appeared in When They See Us, a gripping miniseries about the horrific case of the Central Park Five. Today, John Leguizamo.
David, thank you for having me.
I got the name kind of right?
It kind of right is good enough for me.
Because I've watched all these tapes. Everybody has a different spin on it.
Everybody has a different take. My name is really supposed to be said Leguizamo, but
You don't say that.
no, because nobody could say no teacher, and then the whole class would be laughing, Leguizamo, Leguizamo, and I was like, let's just say Leguizamo, like linguini, and we'll all be okay.
Ah, that was pretty good.
Yeah.
Welcome to the Comedy Cellar here. Have you ever performed at the Comedy Cellar? Did you ever?
No, I don't think so. I might have done some improv here back in the day because we used to have an improv company, a crew, and we used to go everywhere.
Right, because you came up more on the performing arts side of the New York City scene?
I like storytelling. I like characters. I like to be really edgy about what I wanted to talk about. I wanted to talk about. I wanted to bring more depth to American comedy. I mean, American comedy to me was back in the day was a little light. It was a little glib, a little superficial, and I wanted to bring death and child abuse and all the things that I felt needed to be talked about and weren't being talked about, and added some dark sexual profanity to it.
But you also were good with jokes.
Yeah, I still want to be funny.
Right.
Yeah, I still wanted people to laugh at some point.
Well, you won an Obie in 1991.
Given to me by, now I'm blanking on his name for some reason. Wait. Oh my God, Spalding Gray. Yeah, by the great Spalding Gray, who was one of my heroes and idols. And he gave it to me, and I big, tall, waspy
tell
dude.
us who he was, because I'm not sure the audience today, unfortunately, remembers
I know, this crazy generation gap.
Yeah,
I mean, he was one of the great pioneers of storytelling and autobiographical storytelling in one-man shows.
He was kind of the first in the New York City scene to start doing these monologues that were somewhat funny, but not always funny.
No, that wasn't the point. Yeah.
And he was sort of, I think, in some ways, the birth of the whole spoken word movement. He sort of gave birth to this monologue, things we take for granted. Then there was Eric Bogosian.
No, then was Lily Tomlin.
And
who added the play format. Then it was Eric Bogosian who added the sex, drugs, and rock and roll and anger to it.
And Whoopi.
And then Whoopi added the ghetto poetry and a little bit of costuming. And then I came along and I took a little bit of everybody and made it an autobiographical play with a lot of ghetto, a lot of rage, a lot of sex. I helped innovate the jizz comedy, like in Something About Mary, because Freak was all about playing with jizz.
Yes, Freak was so you've done a series of these one man.
Yeah, I'm on my sixth. Yeah,
and the first one was Mambo Mouth. Yeah, right. That got the Obie, and then Freak was another. So you did a whole series.
Yeah, different subject matters in each one.
Yeah, Freak won an Emmy in 1999, and then you won a special Tony Award in 2018. Another man who won a special Tony Award in 2018 happened to be Mr. Bruce Springsteen. But there's an award I wanted to ask you about, something that I had not heard of before. In 2018, you won, I assume it's the highly coveted, Smithsonian Ingenuity Award. What is that?
Oh my God, I felt like such a fraud. I feel like an imposter. You know that imposter syndrome? Yeah, and I'm there with people who are discovering macro biological ways of fixing blindness, a man who just created a robot that's going to go to the Mars and open up Mars to us. And then here's John Leguizamo with his work, Latin history for morons. And it was rough. I felt very inadequate. And I felt inadequate lots of times, but that was really tough on me.
Is there a citation? Did you get it?
I got a massive award. It's beautiful.
And for being...
From David Scorton, the head of the Smithsonian.
And for being ingenious when it comes to theater and performance?
Yeah, trying to combine politics, history, and being Latinx in America, all those things combined.
Well, I did not know such an award existed, but
someday you too shall have one.
I don't think so. But on your, I hope it's centered on your mantle.
It is next to my Tony.
Yes. In October 2016, a few years ago, you were working to register Latinx voters.
Oh, yeah.
And I have this. It's on videotape. You said Trump was good for Latinos because he was bringing together a group of people from Mexico, Cuba, Puerto Rico, Colombia, Venezuela, the Dominican Republic, who hadn't always seen themselves as part of a larger unified committee.
That's well
a larger
said.
Unified community.
Yeah.
What happened? I mean, he didn't turn out to be so good after Election Day.
No. I mean, he's a horrible human being who does a lot of horrible things, but he's so horribly blatant about it that he galvanizes us. I mean, we were asleep at the helm, bro. All of us, white liberals, moderate Republicans, independents, Latin activists, Black activists, and he got us woke, and he did. Because we are in a moral correction right now in our society, trying to make everything right because he does everything so wrong. And I was never as political as I am since he was elected. I mean, I register voters. I went to Florida, stomped for Hillary. I went to Vegas, stomped for Hillary. I've never done that for anybody. I went to Florida and I flipped the seat that was been red for 30 years in a Republican city, Hialeah. And we flipped it with this Colombian mom who said she had enough and felt like she had to stick her neck out there. And we flipped that blue. Beto and I trying to flip Texas because we believe we can flip it with Maria Teresa Kumar, who invented this dope app. Because you people know that. I mean, Texas is 40% Latin, 12% Black. We are really a dominant group. I mean, no, I know there's a percentage of Latin and Black folk that are self-hating, but they don't hate enough because they're a small group, like 11%. But it should be a blue state. But for gerrymandering, voter suppression, and all the horrible things, because it's illegal to register people to vote in Texas. It's a felony. And you have to be deputized. And you can only be deputized once or twice a year in some out-of-the-way, God-forsaken, fucked up place that you can't get to.
With no public transportation.
With no public transportation. And they give you such a small area to register people. And if you register outside of the area, it's a felony. You go to jail. This is a democracy. How do you make it so difficult for people to vote? Anyway, Maria Teresa,
who is the head of Voto Latino.
Yes, and you see her on MSNBC all the time. I love her. She's brilliant. And she and her lawyers came up with a way around that. It's called Voter Pal. And I used it this summer when I was touring with Latin History for Morons in Dallas, Houston, Austin, San Antonio, El Paso. And you get this app on your phone and you hand it to the voter and they register themselves right there. And it bypasses all those laws. Isn't that dope? That stuff is what excites me. And that's what Trump has led us to be. We have to be so clever now and so active. It's not a spectator sport anymore, being an American anymore. You have to throw your hat into the ring now.
Well, in your 2006 autobiography, and I have to say, it takes a lot of chutzpah to write an autobiography before you're 40.
Oh my God, it is the dumbest thing I have ever done. There's so many people who used to be my friends who don't talk to me anymore.
You kind of name names in that. All the celebrities you'd worked with.
Hubris is a horrible thing. It will fuck you up.
Yeah, no. If people want to know about the real Arnold Schwarzenegger or Penelope Ann Miller, you can read that book.
Please don't read it.
Read the book.
Please get away from the book. Don't talk about the book. It got me into so much trouble.
But in the book, you noted that you felt like a second-class citizen in the United States, and then 14 years later now, in Latin History for Morons, you say the same thing. And I was just wondering if there's been any change, progress, or do you look at it a different way?
I mean, look at these facts. We Latinx people are the second oldest ethnic group in America after Native Americans. We're the largest ethnic group in America after white people. Where are we? What are our percentages of success? Less than 1% of government officials? Less than 3% of the faces in front of the camera in Hollywood or behind the camera? Less than 1% of the stories in the New York Times, New York Magazine, New Yorker, or any other rag that has the city's name on its banner, when we're equal to whites in population in New York City. We're 40% of the population in Texas and less than 7% of the government officials. I mean, that's not okay. That's not all right. That's cultural apartheid. I'm living in a cultural apartheid. It's demoralizing. It's demeaning. It's painful. And you have to fight this with yourself. You have to build yourself up every day before you leave your house to be able to confront all these microaggressions upon you daily.
With all your success, do you still feel this deep inside yourself?
Yeah, of course. It's hard to get rid of, and you have to fight it. And I see it happening. I mean, New York City has 3 of the best gold standard public schools in the country. Bronx Science, Brooklyn Tech. And it's supposed to be the schools that help the poorest children in New York City make it. Less then 5% of those children are Latin. Why is that? How is that? That should not be happening. That outrages me. How can I feel okay with all my success and fame and this is happening to kids that look just like me? That's not okay.
You've been very hard also and critical about Hollywood, where you make make a lot of your money, for, not casting Latinos, Latinas, Latinx people in positive roles, but even more importantly, not having them in the decision-making positions.
Well, that's where I find that the problem is. Because, look, LA is 50% Latino, 50%, where Hollywood is.
Right.
And less than 3% of the faces in front of the camera, behind the camera, are Latinx. That's cultural apartheid. It's like we don't exist. How is that possible? And it's not for lack of talent. It's not for lack of trying. It's that executives don't see our stories. They don't see us. They don't understand us. I've been selling scripts, trying to sell scripts for the last 40 years of my life. It's been 30 years of my life. It's been impossible. They go, oh, it's really well written. It's really funny, but who's going to see that? Who want to see that? I go, people like me, because, but Latin people don't want to see white people. I go, excuse me, what? That's the kind of Hollywood wisdom I have to come across. It's Hollywood wisdom, but it's really, it's not racism completely, but it kind of is in a way. The movie I just did, Critical Thinking, true story about 5 Latin and Black kids in the ghettoest ghetto in Miami who became United States champions in 1989.
Champions in?
Chess. Anyway, I'm pitching it all around to studios. One studio executive said, John, Latino people don't want to see feel-good movies. I'll go, what? We just want to see depressing, fucked up shit? No, we want to feel good too. What are you talking about? Ew. And it was impossible to get it done. I had to raise the money myself. And it was a brilliant story. And Dito Montiel wrote it, who wrote Recognizing Your Saints. And we're now at South by Southwest. We open up the festival. But dude, it's hard without Latin execs.
No, isn't there though a market imperative? The growth, the accelerated growth of the Latinx population in the United States doesn't that get them thinking? Hey, we got an audience out there.
We're 25% of the U.S. box office.
Right. So
we added $2.3 trillion to the U.S. economy. If we Latin people were our own country, we'd be the 8th largest country in the world, the 2nd largest state in America. They know that, and they're trying their best. But until you have a Latin executive who understands us, who sees us, until you have editors at the New York Times who live in our culture and appreciate our culture, where are you going to get the better stories about Latin people? Who knows that Prince Royce sold out Yankee Stadium twice, 2 nights in a row? No white or Black artist or any other artist in America has done that. Why isn't that in the New York Times? Why isn't it in the New York Times that we Latinx people have the 10 top hits internationally in the world in music today? Where's that? Where's that a big feature in the New York Times? New York Magazine. That's crazy. Now you understand how I feel?
Well,
I got more facts too.
No.
Just keep bringing it because I'll bring it all.
No,
I got more shit to say. I ain't done yet. An hour may not be enough.
Well, I did watch, as I encourage anyone who's listening to us to do so, Latin History for Morons. And you talk a lot about the conquest of the Americas by the Spaniards and what you call the Great Extermination.
Right.
And you can give us the statistics because they are absolutely overwhelming. We all know how many people perished in the Holocaust.
Right.
Okay, we don't really talk about the numbers of Native Americans, let alone indigenous people throughout North America and South America. And I wonder why you think that terminology, calling this conquest, referring to the Great Extermination, why it hasn't been more widely used and accepted.
Because once you start acknowledging the oppression, the exploitation of Latinx people and Native Americans, because we're starting to understand finally that we're basically the same people, except we Latin people have maybe a little more white and more black in us. That's the only difference. But, you know, most Latin people have, I mean, when I did my DNA, it didn't say, you know, you're Incan, or it said Native American, 26% Native American. I just did Elizabeth Warren here. But it didn't tell me I was Incan or Muisca or Aztec. It said just Native American. So we're the same genetic tribe. But once you start accepting that this country was stolen, it's hard for people to live with that. It's hard with people to accept that, because then you feel like you have to do something about it, reparations and whatnot. And when you knew that there was 100 million people, Native American people in the Americas, and I'm talking North, Central, and South, 100 million people, and then 95% of them vanished through disease brought in by the Europeans, extermination, mutilation, I mean, all kinds of horrors. I mean, Columbus was a horrible, horrible human being. And the Nazis borrowed from all that horror, separating the men and the women to different camps, the Tainos in Puerto Rico and Dominican Republic, Hispaniola, separating them. If you tried to run away, they would burn you alive in front of people. They would experiment with them, with their bodies. If you stole something, they would chop your hands off and hang them on you. I mean, all kinds of horrors. He raped 9-year-old Taino girls and would brag about them in his journals to bring more.
Well, I want to interrupt for a second. Tell us who the Tainos were. Because
I
have to say, you know, John, you know, I'm not sucking up, but I learned a lot from Latin history from Morons, and I had even read Howard Zinn and Edward Galano.
Well, now I respect you because I know you read it.
You know, and I, you know, I'd read them years ago. I'd forgotten a lot of the stuff, but there are some elemental facts about the history of what I would call our culture that I just either we forgot, never heard of to begin with. And you think about these just stunning gaps in our collective ignorance. But so
I love that collective ignorance.
But
that's the name of my next show, Collective Ignorance.
Okay, I get 15%.
Well, that's a high percentage.
Well,
my agent takes only 10%.
That's my starting point.
Okay.
But so
I'm gonna negotiate you down.
But you talk about the Tainos in Latin history from Morons. Just, you know, quickly.
Wait, the Caribbean. There were 3 million Caribbean Native Americans people under the Arawaks. And Tainos was a branch of them, and they were in Puerto Rico, Cuba, and Hispaniola, or Dominican Republic, and Haiti. And, you know, they were completely exterminated, except, you know, a lot of my friends who did their DNA from Puerto Rico and Cuba and the Dominican Republic found that they have like 5, 10, 20% Native Americans. So it's got to be Taino. So that's the beauty of knowing that your DNA is that we know they're still alive somehow, you know?
Yeah, but basically it was a whole people
wiped out completely. Yeah,
completely.
It's called the Caribbean Holocaust.
Yeah. Now I have to say, Latin history from Morons is pretty funny.
I know. It's hard to believe that it's a funny show.
We're talking about genocide, extermination here, but I don't want to give anyone the wrong impression.
But dude, that's what my comedy's always been about, and that's what my fight with American comedy was. It was like it never really captured life the way it was, the way I grew up. I grew up laughing and in pain and oppressed and you know, racially profiled, but I still laughed. I still enjoy my life. And that's what I tried to bring to American comedy through all my work.
What portions of the show, when you perform them now, do you think resonate most with the audience? I mean, I'm sure every audience is different, but you know, have you done it for, you know, this has been out for, you know, you've been doing this for over a year now, longer. Are there, you know, portions of it where you just feel people are going, whoa, I didn't really know this before, or they're just really grabbed by something? Can you tell from up on the stage what is truly connecting?
Yeah, I mean, there are moments of like raw honesty, I think, of expressing what it's like, the angst of being Latinx in America still. And I share that, you know, that Latin life is cheap in America, and that I feel like I have to defend myself all the time. Sometimes you feel like everything is against you, and the audience gets so quiet, and I can hear sometimes people sniffling and quietly trying not to to cry. I hear that. I hear that in those incredible moments of silence. And we sit there as if we were in church and we meditate on that, you know? And then I start doing some other crazy things. But I think the important thing of the show that I felt like I really needed to fine tune as I went along was that I wanted to show people that our history and knowledge of it can be weaponized, that it's a call to action, that we need to spread this information, and we got to get into American history textbooks. We got to get it out there. There has to be that Ken Burns documentary on it. There has to be that Spielberg inclusion of our contributions to World War I and World War II, because they're massive. I'm talking about the American Revolutionary War, where 10,000 unknown Latino patriots fought. Cuban women in Virginia in the American Revolution sold their jewelry to feed the patriots. Galvez gave $70,000 worth of weapons to George Washington.
He was a general.
He was a general in Louisiana, and his blockade with 3,000. He had a misfit army like the Mets of armies. 3,000 Puerto Ricans, Cubans, Mexicans, Native Americans, and freed slaves, and they blockaded the British from the south, so they couldn't surround and get the Patriots coming from the south, so they couldn't ambush them, and that was him. And Cuba gave over $200,000 worth of contribution donations to the American Patriots.
Now we know about Lafayette, but where's the Mel Gibson movie about this?
Right. I mean, and I know it'll be up to me and Latinx executives if we can get them into power.
There's a moment in Latin history for Mormons.
That's how I used to joke about it.
Yeah. There's a moment in Latin history for Morons.
There are Latin Mormons.
Yeah.
They're in Mexico because the Mormons go to Mexico to proselytize.
Oh, yes, of course. They go everywhere. When you say something like, if we were placed back in the history books, can you imagine how America would see us? How we would see ourselves? Now, in all your work, you keep coming back to that theme, how we see ourselves, and the way your culture internalizes the way it's portrayed in mainstream culture. Right. And so that
lack of seeing yourself, because equally the negative images that Hollywood puts out about us, or New York Times just reporting the negative without equally putting positive. If you don't see yourself positively or see yourself at all, the unspoken message is you're not worth it. You're not worthy. You're not going to make it. And that's what what gets imprinted on the kids.
You can't be what you can't see.
But yeah, how can you project yourself into the future without seeing yourself in someone else historically in the past who looked like you, spoke like you, and had success? How do you, as a young person, build your self-esteem? How do you build your self-worth? I mean, your parents can try, but if society's saying the opposite, it's a tough battle, internal battle for Latinx kids and youth.
How did you do it?
I had a lot of mentors. I had a ton of therapy. I'm still in therapy. I'm still working on it. You know, it was rough. It was hard, man. You know, obviously I was a very troubled youth for all those reasons and was in a lot of trouble. And this high school forced me to go to therapy, thank God. And that saved me. I started looking at myself and my life in America, and I always felt like an outsider. And now I started to value my outsiderness, my sort of lack of placement in this society. It gave me some kind of power.
You're listening to a special summer interview series on the Mother Jones podcast with me, David Korn. Coming up, more from my conversation with John Leguizamo, recorded on stage at the Comedy Cellar in New York City. Stick around. And while you're listening to our sponsors, don't forget to subscribe to the show, rate and review us on Apple Podcasts or wherever you're listening. It really helps us out. We'll be right back. Whether you're working from home or working on your fitness, you want what you're listening to be what you're listening to, not what your spouse or kids are listening to. Everyone should have a great pair of wireless earbuds. But before you go dropping hundreds of dollars on a pair, Raycon Earbuds start at about half the price of any other premium wireless earbuds on the market. And they sound just as amazing as other top audio brands that you know. I have to say, I have never owned a pair of wireless earbuds, but I got a pair of the Raycon earbuds and I love the fit, I love the sound, I am hooked. Their newest model, the Everyday E25 earbuds, are their best ones yet, with 6 hours of playtime, seamless Bluetooth pairing, powerful bass, and a more compact design that gives you a secure, noise-isolating fit. Now's the time to get the latest and greatest from Raycon. Get 15% off your order at buyraycon.com/mojopod. That's buyraycon.com/MOJOPOD for 15% off your Raycon wireless earbuds. Welcome back to the show. Let's return to my conversation with John Leguizamo, recorded on stage at the Comedy Cellar in New York City. You recently appeared in When They See Us, which is a great miniseries, also on Netflix. They got to pay me for this show. But it's about the Central Park Five. I think most people will remember that case. Five teens, young children, basically, who were falsely accused of raping a woman who'd been jogging in Central Park. I believe 4 were African American and 1 was Latino. And you see, in at least I think this first episode, how the cops were able to manipulate them into making false confessions, usually by saying that their buddies did it, not them, but everybody ended up pointing a finger at somebody else.
Well, they made when the kids first confessed, none of the stories matched because none of them had done it. So they couldn't have a case. So the only way that Fairstein, the prosecutor, could get a case was make their stories corroborate, make their stories line up, make them say these things on video, because once they say it on video, we can prosecute them.
It was one of the best, dramatic renderings of how you get someone to make a false confession.
Yeah, brilliant.
And I know there are some people out there who argue about some of the facts in the miniseries, but that was essentially what did.
Well, if you feel that, then watch the documentary by Ken Burns and his daughter, which is the most important and best investigative documentary I've ever seen.
Yeah, that was. If
you think
the
facts were fudged,
that was quite good too. You played the father of one of the accused teens,
Raymond Santana. Yeah,
and I got to tell you, watching the series made me quite angry. I mean, I lived through it the first time and reliving it again. And I think of the Bob Dylan line in the Hurricane, can only make you feel ashamed to live in a land where justice is a game. It just was such a, I felt so ashamed watching this. And I was wondering,
which I'm glad.
But my question is for you. Does it make you angry to perform this, to be part of this, to do it? I know you do it in bits and pieces and, over a course of time.
Right.
But, and your character is not angry within the movie. No,
because he was lost. He was a dad, a single dad with like 3 jobs, about to lose his job, not knowing what's going on. How can the cops be wrong? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Even though I believed my son, but I also believed the cops. I mean, it was a conflict for that poor dad. I mean, if cops say your son is guilty, but your son says he's innocent, you as a dad are confused and conflicted. You want to believe your son, but then you're told this fact. So that's why that dad, the one that I played, Raymond said, signed that confession, thinking maybe, innocence is like a shield from God. It will eventually save my son. But no, obviously it doesn't. I mean, don't sign anything. Don't confess anything you didn't do is the big takeaway that I walked out of that. It was like,
me too.
It was like, yo, just remember that for the rest of your life. Write that note to self. Never sign anything and don't confess anything you never did, because it will destroy your life.
Let me switch things up. We're talking about what makes us angry. Let's talk about what makes us laugh.
Was that your producer talking to you?
No. That's me because it's just something that has always just I won't say obsessed me, but preoccupies me. I think about it a lot. I really enjoy comedy. I always have, and I wonder what it is that makes something funny. Why do we find things funny? How can you, as a performer, do something, say something that makes us laugh? And how often do you think something's going to be funny that actually isn't?
Well, I still think shit that I say that is funny and think is funny, even though people don't laugh. I still think it's funny.
It's funny to you.
Yeah, if it's funny to me, that's good enough for me. Even though the audience may not get it sometimes, or a director or writer doesn't get that what I'm saying is funny, or thinking that what is funny, I still think
or
it's
your
funny.
family.
Or my family. Laughter is just life's greatest mechanism to keep us going. It's the best thing ever. So I've always had to be funny because to keep bullies from beating me up, from keep my dad from beating me up. Funny was a thing that helped me through life, and I still love it. It still keeps me going, and comedy is a science in a lot of ways. It really is a science. I'm doing this musical now, Kiss My Aztec. That guy was in Berkeley, and we won a couple of awards in La Jolla, not going to the public. And we got to talk about comedy because it's a big, broad comedy like Book of Mormon. And we got to talk about rhythms of three. We got to talk about hard jokes.
Stop. Rhythms of three. Explain.
Yeah, comedy needs to have that rhythm of three. Is like a da 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 3, and you got to hit that 3 because it's just natural to language and to humanity, that the rhythm of 3. And when you hit it, people feel good. And then that third one should be a bigger joke. The first one should be a light joke, then a little bigger, and then the third is kind of the punchline. If you're going in that rhythm, and it happens in speeches, it happens in themes, it happens in patterns within what you're writing or creating. And then you have hard jokes. Then you have JPMs, jokes per minute, and then you have
what's a hard joke?
A hard joke is a written joke, something that's really written, and it's a hard joke. And then
so you're getting there. It's like
actor proof.
It's like a milepost.
yeah. It's actor proof. It's you proof. It's gonna get a laugh no matter what because it's written to be a hard laugh. And then there's the physical gags, and then the vocal gags that make people laugh. If you're doing I like what you do a funny voice, people are gonna laugh. Or you do some silly funny walk, people are gonna laugh. So you got all those other levels of comedy that I love as well.
When did you know you were funny?
I guess when I was like 13 and 14, because I would make people laugh, and then that's how we would hang. We would hang, all of us, be trying to crack each other up all day, all night. And I used to always try to hang out with the people who love to groove like that, to vibe like that we would just make each other laugh.
A lot of your humor is based on a strong element of mimicry. You do good voices, you do characters. Is that something that came to you naturally, or did you have to actually develop that? I mean, you what I loved in Latin history was the way you moved from your son's voice to your voice, and I could hear the 13. I could not hear. I could see the 13-year-old. I mean, you do that so well, and of course, you've done a lot of voiceover work in the Ice Age movies and elsewhere. But was that a natural talent, or did you at some point say, I should figure out how to do this?
I think it's a combo. I mean, it was natural to me, and because I grew up in Jackson Heights, Queens, where we had everybody. We had the nice old Jewish people that they were our neighbors and they lived over there, and it was fantastic to hear them and talk to them. And then we had the Irish, also old school Irish folk that were there living right next neighbor, the Rileys. They were right across the street from us. They were. And then we had my father who talked like this all the time, God damn it, John, you fucking ruining everything. So I had all these voices I was constantly hearing, and I was able to imitate them, and they would make my family laugh, and so I did that. Then I realized later on that, wow, this is a thing. This is a thing that people do for a living. And I started going, I need to get more voices and add to my repertoire, and then that's how that thing happened.
In the book you wrote a bunch of years ago, you basically call yourself an asshole a lot. and you say actors are not human beings, work is everything, and we're not really fit to cohabitate with other people. And I was wondering, how true was that? Was that a shtick? And is there something about performers that, make them more difficult?
Yeah, I mean, have you ever hung out with actors? It's hard, man. They're beautiful, but especially the successful one, there's a level of narcissism that sometimes is hard to get through, man, because you don't make it to this level without a healthy dose of narcissism. And sometimes that's a lot to put up with, I mean, my poor wife and my kids have to deal with it, I do like to talk about myself a lot, and I do like to do voices, and I like to, sometimes steal all the attention. It's just a natural thing that you've been sort of groomed for. But sometimes it's too much.
You've done a lot of movies. I think about 1 million or so. I mean,
just 120.
120. That's a lot.
Not all of them good either.
Well, you note that. Yes, you're very. I'd be very worried if I was the producer of a film that you were on. If you don't like a movie, you don't keep it quiet.
No, because I believe you can make everything better, and so I'm going to speak out wherever I can to help. Why be in a project and be silent and let it suck? If I can be a part of it and help somehow.
What are your favorites?
My favorite, Summer Sam with Spike Lee and Adrian Brody and Mira Sorvino is one of my favorites. So sophisticated, so brilliantly written. Then I got to say, When They See Us, this movie I just did called Harry Haft. I love. It hasn't come out yet, with Ben Foster.
Is that the one that Barry Levinson?
Yes.
Tell the story, because I know Barry Levinson, the director.
Yeah, I love Barry.
And I've been hearing about this for over a year now, and I've missed the chance to see some early screenings.
Oh, wow.
But
I think it's going to be Barry's magnum opus. I really do, because it's such an incredible story. It's the story of this young Jewish man in a concentration camp, and he's fighting another Jewish prisoner for survival, and he beats him, and the Nazis go, "Oh, you fight very well. I like the way you fight. Would you fight for us on the weekends?" So he becomes this gladiator for the pleasure of the Nazis on the weekends, fighting other Jews to the death. And because of that, they feed him, they protect him, and they guard him. And he gains weight, he gets strong, he figures out the place, he escapes, he comes to America, and he fights Rocky Marciano.
This is a true
story,
Yeah.
Not made up, incredible story. And I play his trainer in New York City when he comes to fight Rocky Marciano.
Well, I'm looking forward to that film, because I have heard a lot about
It's
it.
such an inspiring story, such a powerful tale, man, of survival.
Now, when I read your book, I was surprised to see that one movie that you talked about, at least as being a disappointment for you, was Moulin Rouge. And it's funny because I love the movie. When I think of the movie, I think about you and your role as Toulouse-Lautrec.
Yeah.
But you talked about how you were kind of like, didn't get as much of the movie, a big enough piece of the movie as you thought you should have.
I told you actors were narcissistic.
And I'm thinking, when I think of that movie, I think of you, and I think of that one tango scene, which is not you, when someone dances to Roxanne, the Police song. And yet, when I read your book, it was like, I was barely in this.
I mean, that's how actors, that's the problem with us actors, man. We're so egotistical. And I was promised a big role. I turned down Shaft. I turned down millions of dollars here and there to be in that movie. And they promised me this Oscar-winning part. But it was a small role, and I had to work really hard to pump it up, and luckily Baz is a genius.
The director.
Yeah, Baz, the director, Baz Luhrmann. And so he understood my plight, and he wrote that song for me.
Yes.
And then let me write a scene between me and Ewan McGregor that I wrote from Toulouse-Lautrec's letters that I pieced together. So he let me build it up. But I had to lobby a lot for that situation.
The same director who made Moulin Rouge, also you worked with earlier on Romeo and Juliet, which was sort of a gangster MTV-ish update on Shakespeare.
Oh my God, masterful, masterpiece.
And so it just seems like the type of production that a lot of stories might have come out of.
Oh yeah, there was
So
a lot going
come
on.
you got a good one?
Oh yeah, I can't really share them because, I know I shared some in the book, but it was wrong of me. And I mean, we were boys. I mean, we were boys being boys, and you could do that back in the day because it wasn't on film all over the place. But we were crazy. We were like a pack of wild animals, and we would go to clubs and illicit places and do illicit things. And
This was down in Mexico, right?
yeah.
How did that affect the film?
I think it brought that edge. You saw that edge in that flick. I mean, you saw how crazy Benvolio was and Tybalt and Leo. I mean, it was an amazing time.
Yeah, Leonardo DiCaprio.
Yeah, he was brilliant. It was the best work I've ever seen him do. He was brilliant. I saw that kid. He was 19 years old, and every take he gave 300%. Even if he was behind the camera for you, he would give 300%. I never seen anybody do that.
And I think you went into this thinking that he was just kind of a pretty boy.
Right. I mean,
right. He was
yeah.
a pretty boy.
How could you not?
You were street. He was pretty boy. And that. But,
yeah. I mean, how could you not go into it thinking that? Come on, look. But he killed it. He killed the Shakespeare. He killed it. He brought it. Amazing. And Baz Luhrmann was genius, man. He was like always pushing us, always believing, he can do it. I know. Able ate Mabel on the table. He's got a very strong Australian accent. Good on you, mate.
Who are some of your favorite actors to work with?
Oh, wow. I had a slew. I mean, I love working with Bob De Niro. I did 2 movies with him. One not so good, one great.
Which was the great one?
The Fan. I like The Fan.
Mm-hmm.
The other one, not so much. But he was still great to hang with. Mark Ruffalo, I think he's brilliant. Ethan Hawke, I think is genius. Who else? Well, those are my favorite. Ed Norton, I love.
Actresses?
Actresses. Oh man, there's so many of them. I love to work with Meryl Streep. I had my shot with Devil Wears Prada, but I turned it down. That was so stupid. Anyway, whatever. I'm a moron. Let's just face that. Kate Winslet, Kate Blanchett, all the Kates. I want to work with all of them. They're all brilliant. Yeah, there's so many great actresses. Zoe Saldana, Rosario Dawson.
And I think you've said that Spike Lee was one of your favorite directors.
Yeah, I mean, he's an actor's director. I mean,
did you learn from him?
Oh, absolutely. When I did Summer of Sam with him, I learned that nothing's impossible. There are no such thing as limits.
In what way? But there are limits. You have the sun goes down. You have a budget.
No, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
Come on.
You still give it all your all, and you can still make it happen. And you got to push through all that shit. I mean, that's what the great directors have taught me. Is like nothing is impossible. I mean, I was doing this movie with this young director, Brad Furman, and everything that could go wrong went wrong every day, and we still made the movie, and we still had a blast. The first day, we were shooting, and we were in the hood, and these hood rats came, and they wanted to eat the food, and the chef wouldn't let them eat, and he started choking one of them. So the kid brought out a gun. So now there's a shootout. They closed down our set. The director's shooting them arresting everybody, closing this, and we use that as the opening credits.
Wait, which movie was this?
The Take. The next day, hair makeup quit.
And where were you shooting?
Boyle Heights in L.A., the hood in L.A. And the next day, hair and makeup quit because they said, we can't work in this dangerous environment. And then Rosie Perez is like, I can't do my hair. I have Caribbean hair. and then she would come out every day, go, John, do I look good? And I was like, yeah, you look fantastic. She didn't look so good. She was right. Her hair's a mess. And every day was like that. Then the first AD quit the next day. So we had to get another one. Then he quit. Then the crew unionized against us. Then, the second to last day, I'm in my trailer. Because it went on every day, but we solved every problem. So I'm in the trailer and it's shaking and vibrating. And I'm like, what the fuck is an earthquake in LA? I look out the window, my truck is being repossessed and I'm in it. And I have to bang on the door till the guy stops. And then I have to get off with my clothes. And then they have to drive me to my car. My car became my trailer for the next 3 days. But we finished that goddamn movie. Everything is possible.
You said not too long ago that American movies are so shallow. Do you think that's still the case? And do you think the rise of all these streaming networks, which have produced so much content now, movies and limited series, which are basically long movies.
Yeah. Well, it's flip-flop, right? Don't you think it's flip-flop? I mean, back in the day, in the 70s, which was the golden age of American cinema, and those were some great masterpieces of writing, authorship.
Name them.
Easy Rider, Harold and Maude, MASH, Annie Hall, Godfathers,
Taxi Driver,
Mean Street, Taxi Driver, Raging Bull. Raging Bull's 80s, but 79. There's so many great movies. Apocalypse Now, Butch Cassidy and Sunday. It was masterpieces after masterpieces. The Last Detail, Five Easy Pieces. There's so many great films. And then not so great. Then the American cinema became very much about the blockbuster, about getting butts in seats. It was no longer about the artist, storytelling. And it's getting worse and worse. I don't really go to the movies anymore. And then independent film is suffering. But now TV is the place you go. Streamers and television are where the greatest writing, the greatest acting, the greatest storytelling is happening now.
There's one question I like to ask all our guests. They all are successful and accomplished people. And I know from reading your book and watching your shows, you've had a lot of them. But what do you think your biggest failure has been?
My biggest failure? That's such a horrible question. Who wants to dwell on that shit? My biggest failure? Like failure as a person, You
can define it any way you like.
Of course I can. Who would want
Go ahead.
Oh man. Yeah, I guess I'm too much of a perfectionist. I think that's been kind of difficult for people, myself, because if I can't get things right, I walk away or I quit or, I abandon situations or, because I don't like mediocrity. It wears me out and it brings me down.
And how does that affect the way you work with people?
I'm relentless. I'm constantly saying this could be better. This could be better. And they're like, it's great. And I go, not really. It could be better. And then it's my job to come up with the reasons how to make it better. You can't just criticize. You have to give constructive criticism.
I thought you were going to say playing puck at the Public Theater.
That was so long ago. I forgave myself for that one. Poor Shakespeare. He's turning in his grave still. I was the worst puck, I think, in the history of puck. In Midsummer Night's Dream. I was horrible. The New York Times called me feckless. They can go feck themselves.
Many thanks to our guest, John Leguizamo. Go watch his Latin History for Morons on Netflix and look out for everything else he's working on that will be coming out sometime, somewhere
Somehow,
soon.
somewhere near you, or maybe far away from you, but just go.
Go. That's it for today's show. I'm David Korn, Washington Bureau Chief for Mother Jones. This special summer series is a co-production between the Comedy Cellar in New York City and Mother Jones. The executive producer for the Comedy Cellar is Stephen Calabria, and for Mother Jones, James West. Our audio engineer at the Cellar was David Reed. Additional production and editing by my colleagues on Mojo's digital team, Mark Helenowski, Molly Schwartz, and Sam Van Pikeren. Don't forget to subscribe to the show wherever you're listening. See you next week with special guest, Debbie Harry. This special limited series of the Mother Jones podcast was brought to you by our presenting partner, Raycon. Premium audio inspired by your ambition. Save 15% on your order of stylish and affordable wireless earbuds at buyraycon.com/mojopod. That's BUYRAYCON.com/MOJOPOD.
This podcast is brought to you by Mother Jones listeners like you who donate to keep our newsroom buzzing. Help us stay on the beat. Go to motherjones.com/give.
From PRX.